If I had my way, every home would have houseplants in it, no matter where you are in the world, because they are just so beneficial. Visually, to see green is healing, clean the air, taking care of the plant brings us pleasure. That's a healing act right there, watering it, taking off the dead leaves.
Hi, and welcome to Lead Well. Welcome to this week's episode, and today's guest is Megan Edge. Hi, Megan.
Hello, Christine. Thank you for having me.
Sure. So you are a master healer, an urban forager, and a passionate teacher of plant medicine. And you grew up in Canada on the wild shore of British Columbia. I had to look that up because I saw BC. What is BC? Okay,
Oh,
British Columbia. Learning to harvest healing plants with your family, and now you bring that ancient wisdom into modern cities. Through your practice beyond the garden gate, you offer workshops, herbal remedies, and guided foraging tours, and you help people reconnect with nature, even in the middle of a city, even in the middle of concrete and traffic, which is wonderful.
mhm.
You also work deeply with emotional and energetic healing, combining decades of experience in counseling and also women's health. So there's a lot in your backpack. I'm so excited to explore the secret healing power of plants and how we can all find nature's medicine right outside our front door. Because, yes, I'm pretty new to plants and I have only had a garden for 3 years now. And that's not the entire year, but just some weeks here and some weeks there. So I always have my app with me and I'm taking pictures and I'm like, oh, that's the name of this lovely plant. And you know them all. That's great. So, my first question to you, Megan, is really how did you first get into foraging in a city?
Which is such a great question because when people think of foraging, they generally think of out in the forest, or in my case, including the beaches or the meadows, the
Hmm.
waysides. Now, I was very fortunate that I grew up in a foraging family. I was literally born into a family that loves the outdoors. We had a cottage that we could go to all the time. In terms of the city, people don't think of foraging in the city.
Mm.
And yet we are surrounded by plants. We're surrounded by mushrooms, believe it or not, even in the cities. We're surrounded by all kinds of edibles and medicinals. But
Mm.
one of my favorite stories about that connection to nature, even in an urban setting, was coming home from school one day when I was in elementary school, so maybe around 10 years old or so. And I'm walking home, and I was a dawdler. That means I would just look around and take my time. I was usually late to school and getting home from school because there was so much to see. And it's springtime, and I see at my feet a huge morel mushroom. So for those who aren't familiar with morel
Mm.
mushrooms, they are a delicacy. They are a mushroom that cannot be recreated in a enclosed environment. They have to be found out in nature. And
Mhm.
they come up in the springtime. And the last place I imagined to see one of these mushrooms was in the city. And I knew what it was because I'd grown up in this foraging family. And it was, I'm no kidding, it was this big for people who are listening. That's about a foot tall, huge morel. So I very carefully picked it up and I carried it home in my hands very proudly, brought it home. And when my father got home from work that day, I don't think he had ever been so proud of me and probably was never so proud of me again that I brought that mushroom home. And there it was growing on a busy street in an urban environment. And from that moment on, I was always looking for what's the next thing that I can find and bring home to my
Mm.
parents from our neighborhood.
But wouldn't you be concerned about exhaust gases?
Well, the beautiful thing about mushrooms in particular is that they are really good at detoxifying. So they
Okay.
detoxify the soil and they detoxify the air. And
Mhm.
think of it like a lung. They're
Mhm.
like lungs. And so they breathe it in and they breathe it out. And when they breathe it out, it's clear, clear again. They also only show up for such a brief period of time that there really isn't a lot of time for pollutants to collect on the surface of a
Oh,
mushroom. They
okay.
come up in one day and they're gone sometimes by the next day.
Mhm.
And this one had just come up because I had walked to school that same path and hadn't seen it.
Oh, wow.
They can grow that fast.
Oh, wow.
But that's a really good question, and I do get that question quite often. The
Uh-huh.
beautiful thing about plants, though, is that they are the lungs of our planet.
Mm,
That's what they do. They purify the air.
mm,
And you can wash. No, you're not going to wash your mushrooms because they soak up the water too much. But other things that you forage, like berries,
mm,
for instance, you can give them a quick rinse if you
mm,
want to.
mm.
But generally speaking, any exhaust, we're already breathing it in. It's already all around
True.
us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
true, true. Now you're also into healing. Now, when
Mm.
you think about a city and plants in the city, what's the first plant that comes to mind when you think about healing plants in an urban environment?
As I walk out my door, so many people in my neighborhood grow lavender, and it
Oh,
happens to grow very well here on the west coast of British Columbia, of Canada. It is such a beautiful plant. Not only is it beautiful because of the color and the way that it
mm,
grows, but also the smell of it. And then the what we know of the medicine of lavender. Lavender is one of the most studied of our local plants. I mean,
mhm,
from all over the world, people have been
mm,
studying lavender for a long time. So we know that there are constituents in lavender which are very calming, for example. If you
mm,
breathe in lavender, it goes straight into your brain and it goes straight into your lymphatic system, your central nervous system, calms everything down. It also has other medicinal benefits as well. It's antimicrobial, it's anti-inflammatory. There's just so many things that you can do with it. It helps wounds heal faster,
mm.
especially burns.
And how would you get there? How would you use it?
Well, you can use it in a multiple of ways. You can simply pick some lavender and rub the flowers and just breathe it in and smell it, or rub it on your
Mm,
skin. Your skin
mm,
is a huge organ. It's actually your largest organ and a very good way to get medicine. You
mm,
can dry it and make it into teas. A lot of people use lavender in tea. And then another way that you can work with it is to infuse it in a carrier oil, such as sunflower oil or grapeseed oil, a light oil. And as you infuse it, the medicine and the fragrance comes, it gets pulled out. And
mm,
now you've got this beautiful oil that you can then make into all kinds of different things, salves,
mm, mm,
balms, just
mm,
use it as it is, put it in your bath. It's really endless the ways that you can incorporate such a
mm.
simple thing as a lavender flower into your wellness.
Wow, interesting. Also, because usually when we think about nature, and I think you use the term nature as medicine, we think about forest, we think about a huge garden, we think about probably a river and sitting there. But how can I use nature as medicine when I live in a city? How does that work?
Even if all you have is a bachelor pad without a balcony, you've got windows.
Hmm.
There's so many different plants that you can bring into your home. I guess I'm assuming that people have that plants are sold in grocery stores or garden centers, that people have access to a little 4-inch pot of a fern or an ivy or anything like that that you can bring into your house. If I had my way, every home would have houseplants in it, no matter where you are in the world, because they are just so beneficial. Visually, to see green is healing, clean the air, taking care of a plant brings us pleasure. That's a healing act right there, watering it, taking off the dead leaves. It seems so simple, and yet it's so profound.
Mm,
And in any urban environment, even the most concreted urban environment, I bet you can find a dandelion growing up through a crack in the sidewalk.
mm,
Plants will find a way to come in to any environment. And if there's a titch of dirt, a titch of soil,
mm,
a plant will grow in there. And so when
mm,
you start to look for nature around you and you begin to see it, suddenly your eyes open up to the possibilities of what nature can bring
mm.
to you in terms of healing, of interaction, of connection. Even at the top of the tallest skyscraper, you can have a plant.
And already looking for them, I guess, is then relaxing.
It is absolutely, and it's engaging a different part of your brain. When you're charging down the street because you're on your way between meetings or you've got all this stuff going on and you're way up here in your monkey mind, you don't see what's around you. This is an invitation to people to
Mm,
literally stop and smell the roses or the dandelion or the chickweed or whatever else it is, and to open their eyes to a landscape that they might have been unconscious to.
mhm,
And once you open your eyes to that landscape, you can't close your eyes again.
mhm.
You will always be looking for that little bit of green. You'll see it out of the corner of your eye and you'll wonder. And like you with your app, you'll start thinking, what is that plant? I want to know what that plant is. And as soon as you want to know what that plant is, you're creating a relationship with nature. And that's medicine.
And is there any plant that has helped you through a difficult time?
Oh gosh, all of them. I don't mean to be vague about it, but there are so many plants in my environment. I love seaweeds, for example. Now I'm fortunate I live on the ocean and we have wonderful seaweed beds just off the beaches.
Mm,
Walking along the beach and picking up seaweed and smelling it and feeling the texture of it and knowing, learning about it, wanting to learn more about it is for me a meditative process. When I was a tiny little girl, 3 years old, 2 years old, there was this lilac tree that grew outside my window in the springtime. And I can remember sitting at the windowsill and looking into the flowers
mm,
of the lilac and the smell of it. And lilacs have always been my favorite. When those blossoms come out, I just feel so light and my heart sings and we bring them into the house so we can smell them and they have that connection uh,
mm,
for me. Being in the forest itself, I spent a lot of time when I was coming out of my first marriage of 23 years. I spent a lot of time walking in the forest
mhm,
with a mantra with each step. I would say a mantra as I walked through the
mm,
forest and just let the forest take the things that I was struggling with. So I know that's a long answer. There isn't any one plant
mm,
in particular. It really is. I go to the plants when I need that support and that
mm.
help as a
Well,
natural way to navigate those experiences.
yeah. Now, how can a beginner start to get into plants? How can we tell if a plant is safe to use or maybe even eat without having
That
the. I don't trust my app fully, by the way. I eat things that they say it's okay to eat because I'm like very reluctant.
And it is good to have caution, absolutely, especially with things like apps and AI generated books and things like that, things that are not written or created by a person who has that knowledge.
Mm,
Thankfully, there are lots of really great herbal books out there. And what I recommend to people is try to find some of the older herbal books. Find some of the books that were printed in the 80s and 90s, 1980s and 1990s, or even earlier than that, before all of the AI stuff, because what you're going to be receiving then is the wisdom, the learned wisdom of that author.
mm.
There's a
And maybe
wonderful,
generations.
and generations, exactly. Yes. Yeah. When I was growing up, we had a wonderful book called Stalking the Wild Asparagus.
Ah.
And I don't know if it's still in print, but
Mhm,
it's a wonderful book. And in it, the author speaks to not just the plant identification, but the way in which you can work with the plant. And these are all wayside herbs and plants. So things that grow at the side of the road or things that grow along the country path. So that is a form of urban foraging
mm,
as well as wild foraging. So the place to start is to find yourself a really good and reliable ID book, a website of somebody who is a real person and who you trust, or work with somebody who's locally in your neighborhood or in your environment, who's familiar with the plants and the things that are around you. And then I would say start with one thing. So if you've got blackberries that grow in a abandoned lot, perhaps somewhere in your neighborhood, you do the research, find out that it's a blackberry, find out that you can eat it, which you can, all blackberries are edible, learn about it, and
mhm,
then test it, see if you like it. There aren't a lot of plants in our urban environments that are poisonous to people. But there's lots of things that you're not going to eat. You're not going to eat a maple leaf, generally speaking, right?
mm,
But you can make an unction or a potion or
mhm,
lotion out of the
mhm.
maple leaf, in fact. And ask lots of questions.
And are there any rituals, any simple rituals that you're doing with plants other than creating things or eating or drinking?
In terms of creating an energetic relationship with plants, if you study ethnobiology, that's looking at the way in which people have relationships with the plants in their environment. And that can be a spiritual relationship, it can be a healing relationship. When I work with plants, I'm creating relationship with them. So I'm often having conversations with the plants. And I know that that sounds a bit woohoo, but really it's about tapping into your intuition and listening to your own inner voice. So if I'm working, like right now, I'm looking out my window and there's a pear tree outside my window. When those blossoms, when the tree is blossoming, it's covered in bees. I
Mm,
spend a lot of time looking at my neighbor's pear tree, but I spend a lot of time looking at it. And I feel like I have a relationship with the pear tree because I watch it go through all of its seasons. It's less of a ritual as it is an intuitive connection to the plants. And I do teach other people how to create that connection with the plant, where I would invite a student, for example, to go out into the forest, find a plant that you feel a real connection with. You like the way it looks or the color of it or something about it speaks to you.
mm,
And then you sit with that plant and you ask, are you my medicine, for example? And you'll hear something. You might get a no, but you might get a yes. And if you get a yes, you could then say, and how are you my medicine?
mm,
And you trust what comes to you. So in that sense, there, yes, there is definitely more spiritual connection, energetic connection to
mm.
the plants when I'm working with them.
That sounds interesting. I didn't have that two-way conversation, but I definitely apologize when I kind of trip over them or hurt them. And
Right.
my husband stopped wondering who I'm talking to when I walk through the woods.
I love that. I love that. On my YouTube channel, I have this wonderful video where I'm teaching people how to collect resin,
Mm,
sap from balsam fir trees. And I
uh-huh.
had a person left me a comment. He said, "I loved everything about your video until you asked the tree if you could have some of its resin, and then you lost me." And I was like, "Oh well, sorry I lost you." But that's how the indigenous people here work with the plants in their environment. They ask permission because there's an understanding that these are living beings. Right? They're not inert. They
Mm,
do have consciousness, and there's a lot of research that's been done over the years to support this notion that plants feel,
mm,
they communicate,
yeah.
they have a connection to one another, and they have a connection to us. They do
Wow.
feel things, they feel pain.
We have one person in Germany he's gotten really famous for teaching people about the connection between trees and how they parent
Mhm.
their seedlings and how they share when there is an attack from insects, for example, and so on.
They share resources.
Exactly.
So a lot of people come to nature with this idea that it's fight or flight. It's,
Hmm.
it's every plant for itself, every animal for itself. And that's an antiquated notion of how nature works. And what we are now understanding is that there is community in nature. If we look at the mycelium, which is what the mushroom is, the fruiting body of the mycelium, one of the largest organisms on Earth is a mycelium map in the United States. And it is acres and hectares and hectares huge. It's absolutely massive. And along those pathways of the mycelium is communication, just like in our brains. It's so fascinating. And we can learn so much from nature when we understand the way that nature supports itself and the things that are in the environment. What if we did that? How amazing would our world be if we learned from nature instead of cutting it down and thinking that it doesn't have relevance.
Thinking that we know better. I'm always amazed that humans think they know better what would be good for plants, what would be good for animals, and even for ourselves. I think a plant can better take care of themselves than we could ever do.
Generally speaking, absolutely. And we are many things. Arrogant is definitely one of them as a
Mm,
species. We also are so curious as a species. We want to understand, and it gives me hope and it fills my heart when I see people sitting within a natural environment wanting to understand and listen and hear and observe as opposed to assume they know something. When we get to the place where we can have those kinds of conversations with our natural environment, that's the holistic medicine that we receive from the plants and the animals, as opposed to hugely dissing on pharmaceuticals, but just a little, and something that's inert and fundamentally a chemical that has been extruded from its natural source. It
mm.
doesn't have the holistic medicine that the plant that it originally came from
Yeah.
has when we work with it, because it works then with all of our body systems.
We don't, if you just extract a part of it, it doesn't have the entire entity around it.
That's exactly it. And we are a holistic system. A human
Mm,
being is a holistic system. But what our medicine has done is it has compartmentalized
mm,
all aspects of healing in mainstream medicine. And while that can be really handy in an emergency situation, for long-term sustainable health, it is not. And we are seeing that in droves all around the world where pharmaceuticals are the go-to. Now we're seeing rise in many, many diseases that are supposed to be cured with these pharmaceuticals.
mm.
And we're not seeing that as a result of working with them.
Because I think there is another thing that our generation think we know everything, but we're still discovering every year new things about our body, about our mind, and I think we know very little about how.
I agree. I think we do know. I think we have forgotten more than we know.
Mm,
We have forgotten our knowledge. One of my mentors when I was in university and doing my geology degree, he was a beautiful professor, an amazing man. And the very first day of class, we were doing sedimentology studies, he says to this classroom full of very eager students, he says, forget everything you think you know.
mm,
Nothing is fact.
mm,
Everything is theory in science. Everything is theory.
mm,
So say what you think, but know that you don't know what you know. And for a lot of the kids in the class, that was a shock because
mm,
they had been taught these are the facts. This is it. We know it now. And here's this professor saying, we don't. Let's keep
mm.
asking questions.
We're
And
just
I loved him for that.
we're just making assumptions.
And
Wow.
we're making assumptions based on what we think we know, and
Yeah.
that's fair enough.
Mm,
But we need to always be open to the evolution of our ideas and our understanding instead of shutting it down and saying, this is the only way.
yeah.
That limits us in so many ways.
Yeah. And change can be hard. And changing your own opinions can be even harder.
Yes, it does take a rather mature person to say, maybe the way I was thinking about the world is not correct, and I'm open to something new.
Yeah. So if we're going back to the urban setting, because I live in Munich, it's a big city, and yes, I live at the border, but there is still a lot of concrete. We're
Mhm.
all really stressed out people and don't have time. So if we only have like 2 minutes in a city environment, what is the one thing that you recommend we could do to connect with nature?
Hug a tree.
But
Wouldn't
doesn't
that
that
be
hurt them?
the tree? Hugging a tree? No.
Okay.
Think of the tree in this way. You're walking down the street and you've got a tree that's been planted in the sidewalk, for example, and it's got a little tiny circle of
Mhm.
where the soil is, and everything else is underneath the concrete. And it's reaching up to the sky and doing its very best to keep the air clean and to be something beautiful for you to look at. And 99% of people are walking past the tree and not even acknowledging it. What if you took 2 minutes and you just put your hand on the tree and you acknowledge the tree and you just said,
Mm,
thank you.
mm,
You're beautiful. Thank you so much. In that moment, you've connected and you've disconnected from the all of this that's
mm.
going on and you've taken a breath. And the tree knows. We've done the research. The tree does respond to that acknowledgement.
And I love your approach because usually when I think about hugging a tree and the way I've been told it and I've been taught it, is like we're taking away. It's almost like we're taking in from nature. We're taking in from, we are the recipients, but your way is you are acknowledging the tree. You are the giver and you are giving to
Mhm.
the tree. I love that.
It's a relationship. It's a relationship. And the trees breathe our breath. We breathe what the trees exude. We're in a constant
Mm,
flow. The
mm,
trees provide shade. We provide water if it's a tree that's in a pot, right? Where it's not in a natural environment. So there's always a reciprocal relationship. And the
mm,
more that we acknowledge that and don't see ourselves as conquerors of the natural world, the benefit for us and for nature is measurable,
mm,
right? It's immeasurable,
mm.
that connection.
Wow.
Even just looking down and seeing the dandelion and saying, I see you
Mhm.
in your mind. I'm just imagining now this busy street in Munich and all of these people giving trees a hug. You're like, what is going on here?
I'm talking to them. I'm talking to everything.
Yes.
And nowadays it doesn't matter because everyone thinks I have my headphones in.
There you go. So you can even just get away with it. You could just walk by and kind of brush your hand along the tree and mention something, and someone's just going to think you're just, yeah, on your phone.
Wow, Megan, thank you so much. So is there any question that I should have asked that I haven't asked yet?
Oh, I don't think so. Loved your questions. They're great questions. It's interesting for me. I'm so immersed in my natural environment, no matter where I am in the world. On a high rise or I'm down in the park. It's so natural for me to be looking around and knowing and understanding what's around me that it doesn't always occur to me that not everybody does that, thinks like that, or has the background and experience that I have. So having the opportunity to share some of the ways in which a person can easily connect with nature is just such a privilege.
Wow.
So, yes, thank you for the questions and for the space that you hold for these kinds of conversations.
Absolutely. And about the connection, where can people connect to you if they want to?
I would love for people to connect with me. They can go to my website, which is meganedge.ca, and there's all kinds of links there to the podcasts that I do and all of the courses and talks that I've given on my YouTube channel. It's all available there. They can find me on Etsy. I have a store. I ship around the world the products that I make from the things that I forage and harvest in the wild or in the urban setting or in my backyard for that matter. There's another website, which is Beyond the Garden Gate botanicals.ca. And
Mhm.
that's where people can learn more about the foraging that I do, the tours that I give. I'm collaborating now with a tour company here in Victoria and offering these urban tours for people
Mhm.
here. Where else? LinkedIn, you can find me there. I'm sure everything is in the show notes, but
I'll definitely link you there as well. Yeah.
yes, yeah, I'm in a lot of places. Oh, there is one extra thing that I just wanted to add to that, which is
Mhm.
where people can become creatively connected to the natural world.
Mhm.
And that's the genesis for the book and box set of oracle cards that I made and published with Hay House.
Okay.
And what I did is you were asking what plant helped in a moment when there was difficulty. And it wasn't a plant so much as it was a shape. Because I
Mhm.
said to the universe, give me a sign that I know I'm following my heart while I make these difficult decisions. And it ended up being hearts. I started
Ah.
seeing hearts all over the place. There's this one on the beach. Somebody
Ah.
somebody drew that on the beach. Let's see, where's another one that's easy to see? This is in some lichen, the shape inside
Mm.
the lichen. And I started taking photographs. And this is something I would really recommend for people because we all have phones. If
Huh?
you see a really beautiful flower or some plant that you're really curious about, take a photo so
Mhm.
that you have it with you. And what I ended up doing with my photos, here's a beautiful one
Ah.
this is in the fireplace. This is the log, the
Yeah.
shape of the log. I used these hearts as a way to heal my own heart
Mm.
and then created this beautiful deck and boxed set so
Hmm.
other people could do the same thing. They could see the
Ah.
heart in nature, they could read the message on the back, they could work with the cards as a meditation tool to help connect them to their heart. And it all connects back through nature because these are the things that I found in nature. So this is again nature as medicine, as
Wow.
a healing tool.
And an invitation to walk around with open eyes and open hearts.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And the number of people over the years, Christine, who have said to me, once I saw your book and I worked with your oracle cards, I see hearts everywhere now.
Yeah.
I see them in nature. What a beautiful way to connect to nature by finding those hearts in nature.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, I could go on forever, always. I would like, but I know you have a really busy schedule. So thank you so much for coming on the show today. It was
Thank
an
you.
insightful conversation, and I learned so much from you already today. And I'll definitely look into your website and cards and book and
Wonderful.
outside my window where there is a lot of trees now.
Go outside. Go outside and look around. You'd be amazed at what you see.
Thank you so much, Megan, for coming.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you very much.
This was Lead Well. Now, what is the one thing that you're taking away from this episode? Please share in the comments below and do share the podcast with your friends and family, but only if you like it.